without further ado, the first presentation we have, is from Service Animal Travel Solutions.
Hi, I'm Gina Emmerich. I'm here to tell you about Service Animal Travel Solutions. In January, the Department of Transportation made changes to the Air Carrier Access Act regarding travel with service animals. The first significant change is that airlines no longer have to recognize emotional support animals as service animals. Instead, they travel as pets and follow all the rules that pets do. The second change is regarding trained service animals. Airlines are now allowed to require someone traveling with a service animal to provide a DOT form in advance of travel to receive authorization to travel with a service animal. Prior to this law change, if you were traveling with a service animal, you could not be required to provide documentation and instead could just provide verbal credible assurance if asked at the airport or on board the plane about your service animal. It's this change that's caused us to create Service Animal Travel Solutions. SATS is a web-based tool that allows you to fill out the Department of Transportation form in an online accessible format and receive a unique service animal ID. When you book travel on a participating airline, you provide that service animal ID with your travel information to receive authorization to travel. The benefits of this system are that there's no need to resubmit the form every time you travel. There's no need to resubmit the form to each airline who participates in the system, and you'll receive email notifications whenever your vaccination on the animal is about to expire so that you can always keep your form current. There's no cost to the traveler to use this system because airlines subscribe to it and have a web-based application for approving requests for travel. So let's see how this system works. When you access the system from Service Animal Travel Solutions website or from the airline's website, you'll see that there's two options. The first is to submit the Department of Transportation Service Animal form, and the second is if you already have a Service Animal ID to provide it to the participating airline because you're ready to travel. It's very straightforward and easy to use. Our goal with Service Animal Travel Solutions is to make travel with service animals as easy as possible, regardless of the changes to the law. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And so, Gina Emmerich, welcome to the event, and I'd love to hand you over to the judges. And so over to you guys to ask any questions.
Okay. Hello, Gina. This is Andrew Garnett. Wonderful presentation, but quite a unique idea. How many airlines are you currently working with, and what do you feel is the potential to work with others? And then I guess the third question, because Surin said only 3 questions. Is this also for international travel as well as in the US? Because I know the ADA is the US, so if you can please address those.
Sure. So right now we launched with Alaska Airlines. So they're sort of a medium-sized carrier in the United States in terms of volume. And we put a prototype together to run it for them as soon as the law changed on January 11th. We have almost 2,500, a little more than 2,500 DOT forms in the system for travelers. And we've processed over 3,000 requests for travel on Alaska Airlines. So the process, the proof of concept is there, and we've already developed it. And we are in talks with all the other US carriers. Their trade-off is, should I develop this myself or not? Our benefit is we know that this is a less expensive option for them. They don't have to store the forms or do any of the development themselves because we do all of that for them. So that's sort of our value proposition to them. And so we're working on that. I'm trying to think what the next questions were. Sorry.
Okay, well, regarding international.
Oh, good question. So we've had lots of conversations with international carriers. So there's 2 things. The Department of Transportation form, a carrier who is an international carrier but has flights into and out of the US can request that form. But a lot of governments, specifically Canada and the United Kingdom to start with, They allow airlines to ask even more detailed questions than the Department of Transportation does. And so we've been in talks with them about future options to ask more detailed questions and provide that to airlines so that it'll still be seamless for the traveler. So our goal is for the traveler to have as easy as possible, and this database to be the source for the airlines. There's also opportunities to go forward with, for instance, Hawaii has specific forms that they require. Eventually, you could expand into that as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hi, Gina, this is Betty. I have a couple questions for you. Number one, if you can explain a little bit about your business model. And then number two, do you have competitors?
So the business model is really a web-based tool that's as easy as possible for the traveler to use, and it has no cost to them. So the way it works is that airlines would subscribe to the database, and when they pay a monthly subscription to that database, what they get for that is basically a web-based application that has requests for travel on queue. We also developed an API where if they want to automate that as much as possible and not have to have people look at it unless it's an exception. So it'd be easy enough for the system to send them the travel request, them to update the reservation and send it back. Because the biggest thing is for an airline, whenever somebody wants to travel with a service animal and you're approving it, they're making a notation in the traveler's record, their reservation, so that when they get to the airport or on board the plane, those frontline airline employees know this is a service animal and they're good to go with that animal. So that's the biggest part that the airline has to do. So they can either use the web-based tool to do that or interface with the API and automate it if they want.
And competition?
So right now, there really isn't anybody. So there's a variety of organizations that have thought about trying to create a new process. The issue is that the only thing that airlines are allowed to request is this one form, which is the Department of Transportation form. That's what the law says. So there's nobody else that's automated that. And then the second piece is, because I worked in the airline industry for many years, I know how the airline part of it works. And so nobody has figured out that back end to simplify it for the airlines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And this is Ron from Royal Caribbean Group. So I have a question related to Betty's question about the business model. So it talks about how do you make your money? Because obviously it's free to use for the consumer. Are you charging the airlines to use your system? Is there a advertising component to your web site? So tell us a little bit about what the financial model is looking like.
So the financial model is strictly that the airlines subscribe to the database. So their subscription is what allows us to build it and run it so that it's free to the traveler. So I haven't looked at doing anything like advertising. I'm trying to find ways to build it as inexpensively as possible for airlines. The thing is, I originally started out thinking about how much money I know I'm saving airlines because of how much time and energy they already put into processing forms for travelers. And it solves all of those things for them. But because of COVID, they're less interested in savings and more interested in how many dollars are walking out the door each month. So it's a totally different approach than it would have been prior to COVID, if that makes sense. So even though I know we're saving them millions of dollars by doing it, that's not necessarily what they're interested in or what drives them right now. What drives them right now is how many dollars are going out the door each month. So I'm trying to find less expensive options to be able to offer it to them so that they will commit. Because one of the things that we have an 800 number, and when I talk to travelers every day, they're so grateful for this process and they can't believe how easy it is to use. And they want every airline to do it, right? I had one yesterday that's booked on Alaska connecting to Delta and is like, I don't want to go through the Delta's process. It's terrible. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to talk to Delta about that. All I can control is who's subscribed to the service so far. So we are working on that, but that is where the true benefit comes to the traveler, is the more airlines that sign up, the easier it is.
And if we have time for one more question, I would love to ask you, you said you've been working with Alaska, process amazing number of forms. Have there been any issues with the guest and the dog when traveling? Because, you know, submitting the forms is one thing, but when the dog arrives at the airport on the plane, we have all heard stories about how things don't go well. Has there been any challenges that you've had? And it's not attributable to your process, but I think,
Right.
in my mind, the airline personnel will say, oh, there's a form, it's in the system, they're good to go, but it's not always your approval or the dog is actually going to actually behave properly. Have you seen any challenges at the airport with
Yeah,
some
so
of your?
yeah, that's a good question. So there's two things. One, the law doesn't allow you to just, the law says if somebody submits the form, you have to allow them to travel with their service animal. So you can't really deny someone up front. One of the benefits of the system, the way we want to design it, is that the airline can put in an incident report when an animal misbehaves. And so we wouldn't share that incident detail from one airline to the other, but we could put a conditional notification on a specific animal to say this animal's misbehaved in the past, and everyone would know that, and they could choose to take them or not take them. So that is information that can be used to make decisions according to the law. So that's one of the big benefits of the system, is if they misbehave on one airline, another airline would know about it and could use that. And it's also one of the big benefits is just having all that data in one place. So everyone else is requiring, almost everyone, that you submit the form each time, and they don't really store it. So when it comes to, I can pull all kinds of data now on exactly what's happening, how many people travel more than once, how many are in the system, how many are self-trained, how many are trained by which organization. That's all data that's very helpful to give back to the Department of Transportation on whether or not their law change is working or not. So that's all things that this system allows you to do, but other carriers who are only looking at the form one time and not keeping it and not putting it in a database can't do.
Thank you.
Gina, I have one last question for my 3 questions. How do you plan to monetize your data? It sounds to me that you're collecting all sorts of data. Are you currently monetizing those data, or is there a plan to do that? And which probably will help you with your revenue stream.
It's part of the value proposition for airlines to subscribe to the service, is that they can get monthly updates about not just what traveled on their airline, but traveled in the system in general, which I think is beneficial to them. And like I said, I think we can also share it with the Department of Transportation and large groups like IATA and Airlines for America that would be beneficial to them too. But we have not separately charged or thought about charging for that data, but we could.
Okay, so just so Gina, thank you very much. And we should let people know that you've been in charge of accessibility for American Airlines for how long?
Well, I did customer experience for about 12 years. I was American for almost 30, and then did accessibility the last 3 or 4. So it became my passion. So when I left American, that's what I've been doing.
I think it's all of our passions. So thank you very much. Okay, Srin.
Super. Thank you so much as well from my side, Gina. Great presentation.